Okay, the parsha this week is Vayakhel-Pekudei. Rabbeinu Bachya in the beginning of this week's parsha says a very cool thing. He sets up the whole last five parshias, Truma, tziva, Kesisa, Vayakhel-Pekudei, Be'inyan the Mishkan. He says like this. He says, Im tistakel b'starim eila, if you look into these Sidarim, Timtza Maisa Mishkan V'chol Kelev Niskar Sham Harbe Pa'amim. You'll find it mentioned many times. What are the many times? So he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Iskir LeMoshe Shnei Pa'amim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told it to Moshe twice. Once in Parshas Truma, that's when he was mefaret every single one. And then in Parshas Kesisa, he says it b'derech klal. That, he doesn't go into the details of each one. Those are the two that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe. The third is in this week's parsha, in the beginning of the parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael b'derech klal that they should make es hamishkan v'es. The fourth is afterwards when Klal Yisrael made everything by Yasu Kol Chacham Lev Ba'Oisei HaMalacha, and the fifth is after Klal Yisrael finished making the Mishkan. It says each one it says how they brought each keli. So those are the 5 times, and he says he says it's Lamailas HaMishkan V'derech Chiba. He says just like we find that Klal Yisrael was mentioned, the word Yisrael was mentioned 5 times in a pasuk in Bamidbar, Perek Ches pasuk Yites, Ayin Sham. And then at the end, he says that it's very similar to what everybody knows that Chazal say that by Eliezer Maisa with Avram Avinu, that Yafe Sichas Avdei Avos Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitayrasan Shalbanim. That the Sicha, the talk of the Avadim, of the Avos, is good to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is better than Torah. Why? Sharei Parshas Eliezer called Dvar of Kfulim Ubishnaim Ushleisha Dapin Hiamura, because the Parsha of Eliezer was said 2 or 3 times. It was said twice. It takes up 2 or 3 dafin in the Sefer Torah. V'kama mitzvahs b'Torah tluyos ba'os achas u'b'teva achas v'hein gufei Torah. And there's so many mitzvahs that are tali in just one ice or one word, one letter, which are gufei Torah, but sichas avdei avos are HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves more than Torah. So Rabbeinu Bachya says that the same thing is with the Mishkan. That's why the Torah said so many times. The Torah said it 5 times. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tziva to Moshe twice, Moshe's tziva to Klal Yisrael twice, and the last of the Klal Yisrael bringing the whole Mishkan to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Ramban really says the same exact thing as Rabbeinu Bachya. Later on in Perek Lamed Vav Pasuk Ches, he goes into a little more detail. But there's one prat in the Ramban that he mentioned that Rabbeinu Bachya doesn't talk about, and I'll read you the lashon. The Ramban says, "V'hine lo hisker b'mishkan v'chol kelev kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe." By the Mishkan and all the kelim, it does not say kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Aval be'ela ha'pekudim be'bigdei kahuna yasker kein b'chol davar v'davar. So the Ramban is very bothered. Why, when Klal Yisrael actually made all the kelim of the Mishkan, it does not say Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, but in Parshas Pekudei, where it talks about the Bigdei Kahuna, there it says Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe on every single prat. V'hatam zok der Ramban ki kol al melechas hamishkan ba'pasuk she'amar b'seif. The reason is because in the beginning of Parshas Pekudei, there's one pasuk that says, "Ubetzal ben Uri ben Chur aseis kol asher tziva Hashem es Moshe." So the Ramban is very bothered, and he says the reason is because in Parshas Vaykel, where it says all the kelim of the Mishkan, it does not say kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, but in the beginning of Parshas Pekudei, it says there's one pasuk that puts them all together. So that is what the Ramban, how he answers the kasha. It's Yedua, the Briskerov, in Parshas Tetzaveh, says a shtickle, he brings the Ramban, but he says, like what he was saying before, it's Miyoshev Shapir. What does the Briskerov say? The Briskerov says that the kelim of the Mishkan were not l'dairis. The way how they had to be built was not the way how HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe that they needed to be built for the Mishkan. It was not mechayev to do that exact sizes for the Beis HaMikdash, so it was not l'dairis. But the Big Day Kahuna, whatever the HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, those were l'dairis. The same way they were made back in the Midbar, they were made forever. He says because the lashon of tzav is a lashon l'dairis. So Zokt the Briskerov that by the Big Day Kahuna, that's why it says kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, by every single beged, every single prat, by the choshen, by the ephod, by every single beged, is because that's l'dairis. So therefore it says kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. But by the kelim of the Mishkan in Parshas Vaykel, there it's not l'dairis, so it doesn't say kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. That's what the Briskerov says in Parshas Tetzaveh. The Beis Halevi in Parshas Kisisa is Yedua that he explains the Chet HaEgel. And he has an arichas, but he says that the Chet of the Dordea by the Chet HaEgel was that really they were doing it l'shem shamayim, and they understood ala Seidas HaTorah. They understood all the secrets. Nervous, and what did they want to do? So they wanted to make a Mishkan. The same way B'Tzalel, how did the Gemara says, B'Tzalel Yoda L'Tzaref B'Yas Aisiya Sheniver B'Shamayim V'Aretz. So that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to build a Mishkan for Ashras Hashchina to lead them, because now Moshe wasn't here. And that's even why they went to Aaron HaKohen. They went to Aaron because he knew more. He knew more of the Amkas. He knew more of the Seidas. So it was Mamash L'Taiva. They wanted the Asheras HaShechina. What was their mistake? Their mistake was that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not mitzaveh, then you're not supposed to do it. Even though al pis your seichel, with you knowing ala seidas, you knowing all the secrets of the world, and you think that you could make a sort of like a mishkan for the Asheras HaShechina, but if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not mitzaveh it, then you're not gonna tu'aif anything. You're not gonna tu'aif. It's only gonna work with the tziva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzaveh, then you're supposed to do because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, and not because you understand Allah Seidas HaTorah. So, Zok the Beis Halevi Moyedik, he says that's why in Parshas Pekudei, on every prat and every maisa, it says Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, and he says why? What's the vart? Because Klal Yisrael is being sack in the chet that they did by the Egel. The chet of the Egel is that they did it by themselves. They thought they could come up with a Mishkan without a tziva of Hashem. So now that they're trying to do tshuva on that chet, what are they doing? They're doing kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe on every single thing. They're doing it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded, and they're not doing it because they came to that Havana. So that's the Beis Halevi. So l'chayra, the Beis Halevi is a pella, because that's very nice that he says that that's the pshat in Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe in Parshas Pekudei, and that they're being masakin the chet of the chet egel in Parshas Pekudei. But what happened to everything in Parshas Vaykel? Why weren't they being masakin the chet in Parshas Vaykel? Why only in Parshas Pekudei by the big day kahuna? Oh, there we're going to be masakin the chet of the egel. Parshas Vaykel, they could have also been masakin the chet of the egel. They could have done everything kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. So the Beis Halevi is very schwer, gufa the Ramban's kasha, and it's even more because he's saying they did it to be masakin the chet of the egel. So then why in Parshas Vaykel did they not want to be masakin the chet of the egel? So the Beis Halevi is very schwer. Now, so to answer this, we're going to go on a long-winded road, and we'll come back. The Ramban, in the beginning of this week's Parsha, says his shita, Yadua de Kashita, in the Seder Hadvarim of the Parshias. And he says, I'll read you his lashon, it's Mamash and Pasuk Aleph, he says, V'amar lekulam inyan hamishkan asher nitztave by mitchila kaidem shvar haluchos. The Ramban learns that the tziva of the Mishkan of Truma, of Parshas Truma, started before the luchos were broken, meaning it wasn't after the egel. And really, if you look in Parshas Truma, in the beginning, the Das Kenim says that beferish that Parsha zu nemra b'toich arbaim yoyim shahayim imatan Torah. That this parsha was said while Moshe Rabbeinu was up the first 40 days, and the Cheskuni brings the same thing. And Kiyadua, Rashi doesn't hold like this l'chayra, because Rashi in Parshas Kisisa, Perek Lamed Aleph, Pasuk Yud Ches, Rashi says that Rashi's lashon is like this. Rashi learns that the Maisa Egel came before Parshas Truma, and it's Ein Mukdam U'Mocher B'Torah, and it's Yedua what the Sfornei says that before the Chet Egel, Klal Yisrael wouldn't have needed a Mishkan because it was V'shachanti b'seicham b'seich kol echad v'echad, and it's only after the Chet Egel that Klal Yisrael needed the Mishkan, which stems very good with how Rashi learns that the tziva of the Mishkan only happened after the Chet Egel. But the Ramban and the Das Kenim and the Cheskuni all learn that Avada the Mishkan was before. The tziva of the Mishkan was before the Chet Egel. So I heard from Reb Sruli Borenstein that the Divrei Yoel asks Kiyadua that the Balaturim and the Das Kenim both say, and the Balaturim is in the beginning of Parshas Tetzaveh, that Loi Hisker Moshe B'zeh Seder, that in Gans Parshas Tetzaveh there's no mention of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the reason why is because Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mecheni nami sifrecha asher kasafta, erase me. So even though the HaKadosh Baruch Hu ended up listening to Moshe Rabbeinu, but the Gemara says, Kilalas chacham afilu al tnai ba'a, that a klala of a chacham, it doesn't matter if the tnai doesn't end up happening, it's still chal, like we find by Yehuda with Yaakov Avinu, with the Olam Haba. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to be erased from one Seder. Which one is that? Parshas Tetzaveh. Now, if you think about it, if, like the Ramban, that Parshas Truma and Parshas Tetzaveh were before Chet Egel, when did Moshe Rabbeinu say, Mecheni nami sifrecha asher kasafta? He only said that after the Chet Egel. So how does that work? How does that work? That Moshe Rabbeinu said Mecheni nami sifrecha after the Chet Egel, so he's taken out of a parsha that was said before the Chet Egel. It's mamish, it doesn't make any sense. What's going on? So So the Satmaruv says that you have to say, according to the Ramban, that even though Parshas Truma was said before the Chet Egel, but Parshas Tetzaveh was Zicher, even like the Ramban, and the Das Genim was Zicher said after the Chet Egel, and Ein Muktam Umucha B'Torah, even like the Ramban. Azay the Diviyel, that Parshas Tetzaveh was said even like the Ramban, it was said after the Chet Egel. And he says, Ken Zayin, even Rashi in Parshas Kisisa, that says that the tziva of the Melachas HaMishkan happened after the Chet Egel, it could be Rashi only meant Parshas Tetzaveh. But Avada, maybe Rashi agrees to the Ramban and the Das Genim that Parshas Truma was said before the Chet Egel. So maybe there's really no machlekes. Maybe the Ramban and Rashi both agree to each other. Parshas Truma was said before the Chet Egel, and Parshas Tetzaveh was said after the Chet Egel. Could be there's no machlekes. That's what the Satmarav and Divrei Yoel says. So Lefi Zeh, Reb really said b'shem the Megadim Chadashim, David Yoel Weiss, that you can answer another kasha. In the beginning of Parshas Tetzaveh, the second tzivur, I think it is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe, is to make Aaron and his sons kehanim. Now, kiyadua, that Aaron and his kehanim, Aaron and his sons, were only zeiche to kahuna when the Becharim were chayta by the Chet Egel. That's when the Becharim lost it. The Becharim got it by Yitzias Mitzrayim. They got to be makiv their karbanis. They were the ones. They got the kedusha, and then they lost it by the Chet Egel. Now, if Parshas Tetzaveh was said before the Chet Egel, like the Ramban, then how is Aaron HaKayin and his sons becoming Kaihanim? L'chayra, the Chet Egel didn't happen yet. What's going on? But like the Satmarav, it's very geschmack, because even like the Ramban, Parshas Truma was said before the Chet Egel, but Parshas Tetzaveh was avada after the Chet Egel. So that's why it doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Tetzaveh, because it happened after the Chet Egel, and that's why Aaron and his sons were able to become Kaihanim, because it's after the Chet Egel and the Becharim lost it. So granted, this second raya is not such a good raya. You could dingzach on the raya. You could argue. Why? Because for years I always had a kasha that the Becharim they switch places, the pasuk says, with the Leviim. Now, what did the Leviim do? The Leviim, what did they do in the Mishkan? What did they do? They were just singers and the Meshayrim and the Meshayarim. If the Becharim were the ones who were makiv karbanis, who were the Kaihanim, so then they should have switched places with Kaihanim, not with Leviim. So what's going on? So I found many years ago a Chazon Ish. It's in Oyer Chaim, Simin Kuf Chav Hei Oy Zayin. And the Chazon Ish says a Mordek Yisod. He says that the Becharim were only chosen to do the Avodah up until Aaron and his sons were going to get the kahuna either by Matan Torah or by the Mishkan. That's what they were chosen for. They were also chosen to do the Avodah of the Leviim forever. But Avada Kahuna was always supposed to go to Aaron HaKohen. The Becharim were never supposed to keep the Kahuna. That's what the Chazon Ish says. And he says, I'll bring you a raya. What's the raya? Because Gufa Parshas Tetzaveh, Aaron HaKohen and his sons become Kehanim, even though Parshas Tetzaveh is before the Chet Egel. Mikan raya zok the Chazon Ish that the Becharim were only supposed to get the kahuna up until Aaron HaKohen, up until whenever Aaron HaKohen was going to become Kohen, but it had nothing to do with the Chet of the Egel. So he Gufa brings a raya from Parshas Tetzaveh that it was said before the Chet of Egel, Gufa not like what the Satmarav is saying. So, and Lefi Zeh, the Chazon Ish says it's mamish moedik. Becharim were supposed to get the kahuna and Leviah. They got the kahuna, but the kahuna was for a set time. It was only up until Aaron HaKohen was going to be chosen. The Leviah is what they lost by the Chet Egel. That's what they lost by the Chet Egel. So, like this Chazon Ish, there's no raya that Parshas Tziva was said after the Chet Egel because of Aaron and his sons. And you see the Chazon Ish Taka learns that Parshas Tziva was said before the Chet Egel. That's what you see, not like this. But Lamaisa, I found a Sefer in Eitzer Chachma. I have no idea who it is. The Nidrei Torah. He brings a raya from a Ramban in Parshas Eikev that's mevur that Parshas Tziva was said after the Chet Egel, like the Divrei Yoel, and not like the Chazon Ish. So yesh ladam bazeh l'chayr it's a machlekes Chazon Ish and Divrei Yoel, and Ken Zayin the Ramban Alein is mashma the Parshas Tziva was said after the Chet Egel. The Sfornoi in Parshas Kisisa, Perek Lamed, Pasuk Yud Ches, asks a Bambakasha. He asks, why was the Kiyar, the tziva of the Kiyar, not mentioned with all the other kelim of the Mishkan in Parshas Truma, where the Aron was mentioned, where the Shulchan, where the Menorah? Why was it not mentioned there? Zok the Sfornoi. Gam zeh klilei huske l'maylam shara kelim. It's Perek Lamed Pasuk Yud Ches. Ki loy haisa kavana by lahashkin shchina ba'mikdash. The kavana was not for the kiyar to bring down the shchina ke'inyan kavana ba'isam ha'kelim, like the other kelim. Aval haisa kavana lahachinas ha'kehanim la'avaydasam. It was just to be mechin the kehanim for the avodah, to prepare them for the avodah. That was the tachlis of the kiyar. And the Cheskuni says it even starker. He says, "Lefisha einay ela lahechsher mitzvah." It's only for a hechsher mitzvah. So again, I heard from Reb Sruli to ask on this that l'chayra the Rambam in Perek Aleph Mehilchos Beis HaBechira Halacha Vav says, V'oisen b'mikdash shiva kelim, mizbeach la'oilo l'shar karbonis, v'kevesh ha'olam b'olam mizbeach, u'mekaymai l'fnei ulam mashach l'darim, v'kiyar v'kanai l'kadesh mimenu ha'kehanim yedeim v'ragleim la'avoida, and then he says the mizbeach, and the menorah, and the shulchan. So the Rambam is mentioning the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash. And he says, there's the Mizbeach HaPnimi, the Mizbeach HaZah, the Mizbeach HaOyla, and there's the Menorah and the Shulchan, and the Kiyar, and the Kanai, and its stand. So it would sound like from the Rambam that the Kiyar and the Kanai are the same type of Kli as the other Kalim. Not like what the Sfornoi is saying. So if that's the case, so then it's tzurik shver, you're back shver with the Sfornoi's kasha of why wasn't the kiyar mentioned with the other kelim of the Mishkan? Why is it in Parshas Kisisa? Why isn't it back in Parshas Truma? So, Lule de Mistafina, I want to say a chiddush nifla. I'm not sure if it's even Efshar Loimar, but let's try. So the Ramban says that what was the tachas of the kiyar? So pashtus, you learn, it's to clean off their feet, it's to wash their hands, like you do when you go to a king. This is like we find just recently Mordechai Tzaddik needed to take a haircut and a shower. So it's something you do, but so for sure you have to do it for the Eibishter. But if you look at the Targum Onkelos, the Ramban says, by the lashon of l'rachsa, he doesn't say like what he usually translates l'rachsa to wash. He says l'kiddush, to be mekadosh, and also by v'rachatzu Aaron ubanav mimenu, the Targum Onkelos says v'kadshun Aaron uvnei minei yas yadein. That the tachlis of the kiyar was kedusha, not just cleanliness, not to be clean. And the Ramban says, it's Al Pi Kabbalah, so I'm not going to really understand what he's saying, but he says that the hands are if you raise your hands above your head, they're the top of they'll be the highest part of your body, and the feet are the lowest part, and each of them have 10. So it's connected, it's a remez to the Eser Sfiros, the 10 Sfiros, and your guf is between the Eser Sfiros. So you're bringing down the Kedusha from the 10 Sfiros that are up in Shemayim onto your guf that's in between your 10 fingers and your 10 toes. And he says, Lefikach nitztavu mesharsei elyon lichutz hayadayim v'raglayim v'rachitza hazois lekedusha. So it's for kedusha. I found in the Shari Aaron, he brings from Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch that I'll bring you a raya. Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch says that it's not for washing, because you need to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. You need to wash your hands and feet from the kiyar, even if you just went to the mikveh, or if you use not a kli sharis, if you use a kli chayil in the azara, or if you use a kli sharis outside of the azara, it doesn't work. If it's just to be clean, why not? Who cares? So Memela, Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch says that just like the Big Day Kahuna, the tachlis of them was to be mekadosh the guf. So now we're a little stuck. What about the hands and feet that were uncovered? How are they going to get kedusha? So Memela, Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch says al pi derech haramban that it's all for kedusha. The Big Day Kahuna were for kedusha, and the kiyar, the washing of the hands and feet, was just for kedusha, to bring down a kedusha onto the kehanim. So Memela, I wanted to say that it can zayin. The reason why it doesn't mention the kiyar together with Parshas Truma is because, like we said from the Satmarov, Parshas Tetzaveh was said after the Chet HaEgel, and therefore the beginning of Parshas Kisisa was also said after the Chet HaEgel. Kodim Chet HaEgel, there wouldn't have been a need for a kiyar, because the whole tachlis of the kiyar was for kedusha, was to bring kedusha. But Kodim Chet HaEgel, Klal Yisrael was on the madrega of Adam Arishan Kodim HaChet. They were able to be hashras hashchina on b'seichel echad ve'echad. They were on such a madrega that they would have the kedusha intrinsically. They would be kadosh. They wouldn't need that kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. They wouldn't need that. If you learn that it's just cleanliness, so then you can't say this, because you have to be clean. Well, what's the difference? But like the Ramban and Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch that are saying that the tachlis of the kiyar was for kedusha, so you could say that Kodim Chet HaEgel, they wouldn't have needed the kiyar. It was only after the Chet HaEgel, where Klal Yisrael was Yayin Madregas Harbe, they went down many Madregas. Then, in order to do Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, you needed to have this Kedusha of the Big Day Kahuna, this Kedusha of the Mei Kiyar for Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. And I actually found from the Sefer Sifsei Kayin, who was a Mekubal that lived at the same time as the Arizal and Sfas, he also says, he's Medayik, he says, the Pasuk says, Vasisa Kiyar Nechoshes V'chane Nechoshes L'Rachsa. What's L'Rachsa? Why is it mentioned here, L'Rachsa, what the point of the Kiyar was? Because it's to wash off the Chet of the Egel. So this is very meduyik, like what we're saying, that the kiyar was only needed after the Chet HaEgel, and that's why they needed l'rachsa. It's not crazy, but he doesn't say beferish that it was only needed after the Chet HaEgel, but he says that the tachlis of l'rachsa was to wash off the Chet of the Egel. So, lefi zeh, you could say that the same way the kiyar was only needed after the Chet HaEgel, it could be the Big Day Kahuna, which are mentioned in Parshas Tetzaveh, were also only needed after the Chet HaEgel. And just like Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch said, what was the tachlis of the Big Day Kahuna? It was to be mekadosh the kayin. And v'haraya, we say, ein bigdeim aleim, ein kunasam aleim, that if their begadim aren't on them, they don't have that kedusha of kahuna. So the tachlis of the bigdei kahuna was to bring that kedusha, just like the meikir. Fakert, Reb Shimshon Fulher says, just like the bigdei kahuna brought kedusha, so too the meikir brought kedusha. So, and v'haraya l'chayra, that kaidem cheta egel, who was going to do the avodah? The avodah was going to be done by the bechayrim. Bechayrim, we never find that they needed bigdei kahuna to do the avodah. It was only nach the cheta egel where Aaron HaKohen got the kahuna, and therefore Aaron HaKohen got the kahuna. Therefore, after the Chet Egel, where we went down in Kedusha, in order to do the Avodah, they needed Bigdei Kahuna. So it can sein, the Zelba way we're saying in the Kier, that it's not mentioned in Parshas Truma, because Kaidem Chet Egel, we didn't need the Kier. So it could be, like the Sad Merav says, that the whole Parshas Tetzaveh, even like the Ramban, that the whole Parshas Tetzaveh is the Ramban that holds that Parshas Truma was said before the Chet Egel, but Parshas Tetzaveh Zichur said after the Chet Egel. So like the Ramban, the Bigdei Kahuna was only needed after the Chet Egel. So, Lefi Zeh, we could go all the way back to the Beis HaLevi. We wanted to know, Beis HaLevi says, the way how Klal Yisrael was masakin the Chet Egel. What was the chet? The chet was that they tried to do something by themselves without listening, without a tziva of Hashem. So therefore it says, Kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, by every prat u prat. That's how the Beis HaLevi explained why it says Kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe so much in Parshas Pekudei. So we asked, the Beis HaLevi's appellate, what happened to Parshas Vaykel? Parshas Vaykel, it doesn't say Kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, like the Ramban pointed out. The teretz is, like what we're saying, is because the Bigdei Kahuna was only needed after the Chet of the Egel. So Klal Yisrael wanted to be masakin the Chet of Egel with the items that were only neschadish after the Chet of Egel because of their Chet. All the kalim of the Mishkan were anyways, was mitzvah anyways. It had nothing to do with the Chet of Egel. That's not where they wanted to focus the tikkun of the Chet of Egel. Where were they focusing the tikkun of the Chet Egel? It was by the Bigdei Kahuna, which were only neschadish after the Chet Egel. It was only because of the Chet, is they needed the Bigdei Kahuna. Therefore, that's where Klal Yisrael focused, and Klal Yisrael said, "This is we're going to be masakin the Chet of the Egel." But by the kalim of the Mishkan, by the Mizbeach, the Shulchan, the Menorah, those were all anyways mitzvah, like the Ramban says. It was mitzvah way before the Chet Egel. Those they had to make, and that wasn't where they needed to be masakin the Chet of the Egel. Shkoyach.